Welcome, great to have you with us. Rory O'Connor is here in studio. Rory, welcome.
Hey Joe.
Just getting a tingle. It's a big game, and how I know it's a big game is that Ian Madigan is in studio.
Great to be in studio, yeah, really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I know these 2 weeks will tell us a lot about this Irish team and where they are. It's sort of an up-in-the-air conversation right now. Big thank you to Energia, who are our rugby sponsors as ever. They sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels, at grassroots, the Energia AIL, and they are official energy partner to Leinster, Connacht, the Irish men's and women's teams. And their Rugby for All initiative welcomes everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. To learn more about Energia's exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, you can visit energia.ie/rugby. Your schedule for Saturday, like France are playing Fiji. That'll be a fun game. South Africa, who we'll be keeping an eye on, have Italy. 3:10, England, New Zealand. Very tasty look about it. And then 8:10, should be a good atmosphere. Ireland against Australia. As we record, the Irish team has just been named, so we'll get into all of that. Rory O'Connor with some interesting intel just before we came in. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Andy Farrell is the word on the street.
Yeah, it sounds like, and I think we can gauge this from his public comments as well. Not that that's all I'm going off, but he has been about it's a touch of the Hamer Hallgrimsson. He's been one of the best analysts of his own team for the last couple of weeks. I think his public comments after the games have been brutally honest, and he hasn't been sparing the players from kind of laying it out there what he's disappointed in. And from what I'm hearing is that behind the scenes the meetings are quite intense, that while I'm sure the environment is still enjoyable to go into, he is demanding an awful lot from the players at the moment. I think there's been a bit of a shift towards Sexton doing a bit more in terms of taking on more responsibility as well, in terms of some of the attack stuff, sharing that role with Andrew Goodman, which I'm sure is a bit of a balance between the two of those as well. And even just Andy Farrell was present at the Rugby Writers of Ireland Awards on Tuesday night, and he was up on stage, and he was up with Dan Sheehan. They won Team of the Year for the Lions, and Andy Farrell didn't seem to really want the award. He thought the Irish women's team should have got it. And then Dan Sheehan was asked by Neil Tracy, I think was the host, and he said, Dan Sheehan was asked, what about 2029? Do you want to go again? And he said, well, Andy, you'd have to pick me. And Farrell said, well, I haven't been given that job. You better start winning some trophies. And everyone laughed, but he wasn't joking that much. So I think there's a definite sense that he knows that they have an awful lot of work to do, that what they're producing is well short of what he expects from them. I'd say he wouldn't disagree with a lot of the analysis that's been talked about in here, that they are a team that have slipped off where they want to be, and he's trying to drive them back there. And I think his selection points a few directions that they could go. It's about as exciting an Ireland team as he's picked for a long time, and we look for freshness. It doesn't have to be a new face. It could be just someone being redeployed in a new area that opens up new things. So I'm sure we'll get digging into it, but it was an interesting couple of little nuggets I've heard over the course of the last couple of days.
Love to hear it.
Yeah, it was really interesting even after the game, because there was plenty of positives in that Irish performance. To get up to a 17-0 lead. It was the middle part of the game was disappointing, where they let Japan back into it, but then they finished really strongly in the final kind of 25 minutes. But you could have, as a head coach, put a positive spin on it, and us working in the media probably would have bought large parts of it, but he didn't. And I think he knows deep down that there's a growing gap between Ireland and the teams that he probably perceives ahead of us, which would most likely be New Zealand, England, South Africa and France. And we're now in the middle chasing pack, and we're playing one of them this weekend in Australia, and that's why this game has a really, really big importance to it. And he knows that unless he sees a really high-level performance this week, beating South Africa is going to become a real stretch for this team. We saw South Africa's strength. I think I said it in one of our earlier shows in the season when I saw South Africa play New Zealand in Wellington in that second half. That was a performance that really stopped me in my tracks, and I thought this is by far and away the best team in the world right now, and they're continuing to back it up, and they've rotated heavily again this week, I think, with probably one eye on the Irish game next week. That's one that they really want. But still, the team that they've put out against Italy is really strong. It just shows they have the deepest squad in World Rugby by a long way.
Well, let's get into this Irish team name then. Just a few moments ago as we record. So I guess to Rudd's point of redeployment, Mac Hansen at 15. Very interesting. That could be a lot of fun. Tommy O'Brien rewarded for his good form, continues on the right-hand side. James Lowe, the other wing. And then Gary Ringrose injury.
Well, he hasn't trained. He wasn't training early in the week. He's got a hamstring, and I suspect would have been involved had he been fit, because I think he's out now. It's still the top 13, but they've gone with Henshaw in that department.
Stuart McCluskey's alongside him as 12, so Henshaw 13. Sam Prendergast gets the nod at 10. Gibson Park alongside him, and the pack is 7 of 8 are Leinster. Paddy McCarthy comes in for his first start, third appearance. For the guy who was like, why not put a Munster man in as the third guy? This irrelevant...
the third choice isn't too important. It is now.
Paddy McCarthy having a hell of a November. In fairness to Farrell, he sometimes sees something in somebody and he backs it. Dan Sheehan in, Tyke Furlong in. James Ryan is alongside Tyke Byrne. And then Ryan Baird is at 6. Something that Rory O'Connor had mentioned was Caelan Doris 7. And it seems to... everyone reached the same conclusion in the same 2-week spell. So Caelan Doris at 7. He's played twice before at 7 for Ireland. And Jack Conan in at 8. Replacements, Kelleher, Porter, Clarkson and all Leinster front row. Nick Timoney, Keane Prendergast, and then Casey and Crowley and Bundyaki. So where do you want to start? I guess the Hansen thing. I out of my peripheral vision felt you about nod when I said this could be fun at 15.
Yeah. He's back fit, which is important. I think once he's fit, he's almost an automatic starter for Ireland. It's just a matter of where you plug him in. He's never played 15 for Ireland. He has played there for Connacht a couple of times. He's done very well. What he does on the wing, I don't think it'll change an awful lot because he is a second pair of hands. But I think Anim will be able to explain this far better than I do. I think he has a much better scope to do that from fullback. I think he can pick his moments much better. He can have more involvements, and he will offer Prendergast just a lovely comfort blanket with a second playmaker. I think Ireland, we haven't seen it very often over the years, but last year I think Prendergast and Frawley played together once, and it just opened up the attack beautifully. And whether it's Crowley or Prendergast, having that luxury of having Mac Hansen's set of eyes outside you is just lovely to have. And obviously Keenan is still the first choice, but this is, if it works, is an option that could really change how Ireland counter attack, but also what they do in phase attack. And it keeps Tommy O'Brien's speed on the right wing and James Lowe's power and left boot on the left wing. And the balance of that back three, to me, looks almost perfect of what you'd look for in a back three. Now, he needs to win his aerial battles. If they put Sueli up against him, they've picked Augunu on the right wing. That's going to be a challenge because he's a big, powerful ball carrier who's played a lot of centre this year. There are things he'll have to get right. Jorgensen's one of Australia's best players at fullback, so there will be defensive things that they will test, but I think he's up to that. And like Doris at 7, that's 2 positional switches, I think, that can really inject something into a kind of a flailing Irish team and give them just that bit of impetus going into that World Cup cycle that's coming.
Yeah,
I'm really excited about it. I was hoping that he would be the 15 going into this group of games. I was really disappointed when he got injured. I was hoping to see Osborne really play in the centre. Not that Osborne's played poorly, but look, he's injured now. Let's focus on Hansen, the man who's in possession of the shirt. Rudd has touched on it. It's his ability to get into the back line. He does it really well as a winger, and he's given license by Andy Farrell to roam as a winger. You'll see him popping up on the opposite side. He fits in outside 10 within the centres, gets second touches on the ball. He's really busy, and it's his awareness of knowing when to accelerate, when to try and go through the line, when to take his foot off the gas and be the link man. He's an excellent passing game. I was a small bit critical of him probably around this time last year, or maybe leading into the Six Nations, where I didn't think he was playing well. He'd had a nasty shoulder injury and he wasn't fully tuned up, and that can quite often happen. He really found form as the season went on, and he was brilliant on the Lions tour. Like he was one of the stars of the tour, in my opinion. And he was spoken about, so there's the relationship between himself and Farrell is one of real bromance, and he was coming up with these double and triple efforts, and that's what Farrell was trying to instill into the Lions team. But I'd echo what Rudd said. The balance of this Irish backline, you've got Gibson Park, who's going to play with real speed, get the forwards onto the front foot. Playing against Australia will suit Prendergast because it's more about unlocking their defence. as opposed to coming up, let's say, the following week against a really powerful side where it's going to be a different challenge. So I think Prendergast is suited to it this week, but it wouldn't surprise me if Crowley came back in because he's more physical of the two out halves the following week. And then in the centre, McCluskey, we saw his offloading game against New Zealand. That's going to add a real nice dynamic to that centre partnership. Robbie, in fairness to him, got through a truckload of work at the weekend. I can see him doing a lot of the hard yards alongside McCluskey. And then the balance of Lowe and Tommy, as Rudd said, you've got the power on the left. So if you're not fancying the picture that you've got in the middle of the field, you go back to Lowe. If you do like it, you go to the speed, you go to Tommy O'Brien. And Tommy's been a great find. You know, he's really locked down that right wing. And yeah, it's a big opportunity for Lowe because it's to offer something different. And I think that's what Farrell's looking to do in the out half position. He knows that both Prendergast and Crowley need to lift their game because it isn't the strongest part of Ireland's 15. And by rotating them and giving Sam 30 minutes off the bench last week, giving him a start this week, I don't think Crowley's going to be, his confidence is going to be shot from this. I think it's been a conversation of, look, these are the areas that I think he can work on. And he'll be in agreement with those. He knows that his kicking wasn't on point, out of hand in the New Zealand game. I actually thought he played well in the Japan game. He did a lot well, and the team actually let him down. He got the team into good positions, and it was our inaccuracy, largely from the forward pack of loose passes, that was then putting Crowley under pressure. Whereas when Prendergast came on, he was attacking. It was perfect for him. He was attacking against a team that had lost their line speed. They were fatigued, and he is a really, really good running out half at unpicking defences when he gets those opportunities, and he did it really well in the final 30 minutes of that game.
Yeah, I would almost take it as read that Crowley comes back in for South Africa as well. That's how I feel he's managing this November. Prendergast was put up in front of the media this week, which is, I think, a good thing for the team to do. Like, give the public the main characters, let's hear from them. And Prendergast, mature young man. I would prefer if he was less well adjusted and was saying he hates Jack Crowley, but that's not what he said. He said, if either of us get bogged down by the rotation over the last year, then it's selfish. And I think we both agree it's important we both stay positive. I thought Jack played really well the first two games, started the season really well. We both get on very well and we share the same ambitions, so it's not hard to get on. He's asked questions you might expect. The Sexton shadow almost. I don't think it's going to work if all of us are just trying to be like Johnny, because we're not Johnny. We need to try and be ourselves. And Ani talked in that vein. My main thought after Chicago in particular, when he came on and just had a stinker, really, it just didn't go his way. I was worried this guy's confidence is going to be affected. And then against Japan, I'm fine.
Yeah, but that confidence is fickle and it comes back. You know, you wouldn't write him off based on the fact that he had a slow start to the season, but it did look like he was in a difficult spot with the couple of things that happened at the end of the Bulls game in South Africa. The Munster game didn't go his way. Like, he wasn't in any way to blame for that game, but Crowley was so much more the dominant character on the day, and that would have hurt them, and it would have damaged, you would think, it damaged his belief. And like, having dealt with him, I wasn't in on the media on Tuesday, but I have had a couple of chats with him, and he's just like, when I first met him, he was one of the most confident 21-year-olds I've ever come across. But he's been through the mill in the last year. Like, what should have been the greatest year of his life, all the things that he should have ticked off, I think began to weigh more and more heavily on him, partly because the results didn't end up going his way. The France game would have hurt him an awful lot and would have damaged his confidence, and then the Northampton game, and then all of the stuff that we talk about in here, and all of the social media noise, and the direct kind of abuse that he would have taken, I think would have chipped away at his enjoyment of it, and also his sense of achievement. But at the end of the day, he's had a year now of unbelievable experiences that should stand to him as a professional rugby player, and as one of Ireland's two best out halves right now. I would hope that he's being a bit more ruthless and selfish than he's saying in that battle with Jack Crowley. I hope the two of them are backing themselves and while they might get on very well, they have to, I think, they want to kill each other in terms of, like, being that number one. And I presume they are, because, like, out half should have that streak, and we've seen with that's the position that needs the most dominance, I think. But right now, I wouldn't say take it as read that the Crowley's going to start next week, because if Sam Prendergast's man in a match against Australia, surely he gets to keep the jersey. I don't think Crowley's done enough. I think if we were picking for South Africa now, I'd pick Crowley. But if Prendergast is brilliant at the weekend and the team functions well, and the attack does often look better when he's on the pitch, I think Farrell will be tempted to go 2-2 and then say, look, you've both had a really good opportunity into the Six Nations.
Are we not, though, at a simple point with Prendergast whereby his defence is not good enough to go against South Africa? Does it not just come down to first principles here, no? Do you agree if Prendergast was man of the match against Australia and played very well, and it's the kind of game, as you said, that could work for him, and him and Mac Hansen are like, God, we're having a lot of fun out here. Do you think that Farrell might say, actually, in you go against South Africa?
Yeah.
That defence?
And then that's the balance of it. You're going with, well, are we going to go with the perceived better attacking option, as you touched on there, if himself and Hansen catch fire and, you know, McCluskey's offloading game gets going, and, you know, the whole fluidity in the Irish forwards are running onto the ball better than they have been so far. That's the temptation. But you could also look at it and go, well, I want to see you proving yourself defensively in the European Champions Cup multiple times before you're then getting the luxury of being selected for a big test match against the likes of South Africa. And Sam hasn't done that. And he it's not just defensively, it's also carrying the ball. Like Crowley, you know, the simple stats of like yards after contact, defenders beaten, he's much more confident when he's carrying the ball into traffic. And you're going to have to do that against South Africa. I know we're playing Australia this week. We want to focus on that. But it's not just the defensive point that I'd be leaning on. And that's, but look, it will also come down to, as Rudd said, if he shoots the lights out, that will change opinion. And that's why we go week to week in professional sport, because a lot changes in a week.
Okay.
Just on the point, sorry, as well, on the two guys getting on. Like, I do believe that he's telling the truth there, that they do get on. And you do have to get on as out halves, because first off, you're spending so much time together. You know, a lot of the time you'll warm up together before a session, whether it's passing or kicking. You'll always be goal kicking afterwards. That can mean you're travelling to and from the stadium on captain's run day, or, you know, you're spending a lot of time. But then there's also the playbook element. When you get handed the playbook, I would have always discussed it, whether I was the starting out half or the sub coming on. I would have always discussed the playbook with the other out half. Now, what plays do you like this week? And I would have always been honest, and I would have always got honesty back.
Did Johnny and Raj discuss it?
Yeah, they would. Now, Johnny would have crafted large parts of the playbook himself. But no, Johnny was actually really forthcoming, as competitive as we were in training. And, you know, you'd want to show the coach that whether you're in the first or the seconds, that you're running the team better than the opposition 10. And when things weren't going well, you'd be loving it, and you'd be, you know, doing your best to capitalise on that. But that is a really key part of it. You know, I think this play will work when the first line out that we get in their half. It's going to be an easy line out for us to win. It's going to get us the middle of the field. They're the kind of conversations that out halves are having all the time with each other and with the other halfbacks. And to be honest, it's such a long season. It would be exhausting not to get on with each other.
The physicality, like Prendergast, again, jumping ahead to next week, he will be on the pitch for at least 15 minutes against South Africa, and South Africa will have a plan for that. Yeah. So whether it's 55, 60 or 20, he's going to have to figure out a way of... And like Nene Katau is going down his channel this week. We know that. Suoli will go down. Joe Schmidt will have watched him as much as Andy Farrell has watched him over the years. And they had a plan from last year in defence, but I think now they will definitely have a plan for him in attack. They stood off him last year and made him play in front of them, and I thought it was really smart. And he gave a really good analysis of Crowley and Prendergast afterwards, Joe. So he will have attention this week, and it's based on whether, if he can handle Ikatau and Suoli, that will increase the belief that he can do it. But right now, it's definitely Crowley. But he will have to front up against these teams if he's going to be in the team.
Yeah, it's actually such a great point, because Joe is the master at the detail. He'll go into that, and James O'Connor is such an intelligent out half. He'll know, right, I'm coming up against a tall fly half. How do I want to expose him defensively? I want to get him moving laterally, and I want runners coming back across him.
So he's to change direction.
Correct.
Yeah.
Long strides. And as you said, like Australia actually did it to Raj in the World Cup, where they just kind of left him and nearly created a vacuum for him. And then they were shutting down the options outside him. Prendergast wants the defenders to jump at him and then create dog legs outside of the defender who's opposite him. If you don't do that, you can end up kind of pumping, waiting for the right option. They aren't there.
So their message will be, don't sell yourself to Prendergast. Make him make the move.
Yeah, and the Australians' defence isn't particularly like it's chalk and cheese between South Africa's hard press or rush defence. It is more controlling. They'll manage it to the touchline. They want you on the ground so that the likes of McWright and stuff can get over and compete. But that is a good centre partnership. Like Len Ikitau is a brilliant number 12. He's at the top of his game. He's coming in fresh. He's had a couple of games with Exeter since the Rugby Championship, and he's been a star in the Premiership. And he's going to really add a dynamic. It was interesting, even him saying, "Look, we actually owe one to Joe. Like, they love Joe Schmidt, and he was saying how Joe has revived a lot of their international careers, the likes of Wilson and stuff. And they know how big it is for Joe to come back and play this game in Ireland. And of the last two games that they've got, and it's been a relentless schedule for Australia. I think this is their
15th game.
This is their 15th game.
Of the year,
Fiji, the Lions, Rugby Championship, and then they played Japan before England. And it's been, a lot of different time zones and travelling there. But I still think there's a one big performance in this Australia team, and maybe the timing of that won't be great for Ireland.
Well, of their last 8, they've lost 6. So
I don't think it will come against France next week, put it that way. I think it's going to go to the well. It'll be this week.
They always play well in Dublin.
Yeah.
I don't remember Ireland ever having a comfortable day against Australia. Maybe I'm misremembering one or two, but even Dave Rennie, that his team arrived 4 years ago on a losing streak, and they lost, but they took it to the wire. There's been loads of examples of Australian teams pitching up here. They seem to, and especially with Joe, he would have, even a selection in Italy, even though like Italy played exceptionally well last weekend and looked like a different team, and they looked really like on top of their game with Menoncello and all of the players that we've seen in the Six Nations, a team that nearly beat Ireland in the Six Nations. There's no shame in losing to Italy in Italy.
Yeah. We're jumping around. I'm going to come to Australia if I can. I'm just going to put manners on you two for a second. So let me just stick with Ireland. So that's Prendergast. We want to see what he does in attack. Hopefully it clicks, and then we'll be watching closely what he does in defence. Some things Farrell said after Saturday, which don't just apply to Saturday, but are more general points to get your thoughts on. So asked if he got the response following the performance in Chicago, he said no, but I did get a response at half-time. He did say something which I thought was interesting, and you guys might have thoughts on it. So he said, look, the game against Japan is a bit like a Charity Shield match, but this point I think is worth you guys explaining. We're not playing on the gain line, he said. We're not getting our forwards into the game as much as you would have liked. And a lot of that comes from not punching onto the ball with proper intention in the first place and not getting quick ball. So those two things, not playing on the gain line. And you think of Ireland at their best in the last couple of years, it is Ireland on the gain line. Quick little short pop pass through a gap, we're away. So not playing on the gain line. And then that kind of old school... somewhere Shane Jennings, who's a listener to the pod, is nodding approvingly. Like, just smash it. We're not coming onto the ball, like, with enough oomph. We're too nice about it. Why are those things happening? Not on the gain line and not punching onto the ball.
I think...
And do you agree that this is a correct diagnosis?
I do, and this is something that I saw and have tried to dive into it from a statistics point of view. It's not the easiest thing to measure. You can measure like yards after contact, but you can also measure speed onto the ball. And Match Sense, who we referenced last week, they use a grading system for the speed that players are moving onto the ball. You compare it to even Scotland against New Zealand, were racing onto the ball, and that's where you can make the decision to carry the right one if you come on with the right speed and you bulldoze over the person in front of you. Going back to the World Cup, where we were playing this system where you're looking to unlock the opposition defence, it is defender 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it blocked off? Okay, well, let's try 6, 7, 8. If that's blocked off, we're going all the way to 9, 10, 11. And we were so good at it, and it was such tight shapes, and it was this kind of heel-toe structure, everyone running onto the ball, perfect timing, everyone was an option. The game has moved on slightly from that. And I think we're still caught in playing that system of, should I tip the ball? Should I play it out the back? The player who's running the tip line isn't running with the impetus that he should. And as a result, like of the last 7 games, the game against New Zealand, so including the 5 Six Nations game, the game against New Zealand and Japan, we came on with the least amount of speed out of the 7. And we've had the least amount of yards after contact. So we're still in the mindset of trying to unlock defences, but we're not earning the right to just get over the gain line. And if you look at the
first principles.
First principles, exactly. If you look at the try that South Africa get at the end of the France game, like, yes, it's unbelievable from Sasha to outrun the French defence. But what comes before that? It is 3 phases of South African forwards bulldozing around the corner. Really quick ruck ball. They're number 9 playing on the front foot, and then they've earned the right on the 4th phase to outrun the French
And do we
defence.
have the personnel to bulldoze?
Well, look, when we're talking about speed onto the ball, yards after contact, that is largely back row. That's where you're going to get that. Maybe second row to an extent, and the odd time your front row will come in with big carries.
So Baird, Doris, Conan, that feels
Correct.
like they have plenty.
They do, but are they getting themselves in the right positions to do it? Or are they just saying, now's the right time for me to just go on a bulldoze and carry, like what Doris did on his first carry against New Zealand? Now, I know that's a first phase play. It's slightly different. We're talking about more higher on the phase count, but we're going to have to do that over the next 2 weeks, because otherwise we're going to end up looking very lateral in our attack.
Yes.
There's nothing better when someone punches forward, and that then allows you to play square and play on the front foot.
Because when I read the comments, it hadn't occurred to me. But it's almost, it was a bit of a light bulb moment when he said that, Farrell. He's always a perceptive man, he knows his rugby, but you suddenly thought, yeah, when is the last time just in general phase play around midfield that with like a kind of raw aggression, someone just smashed into someone else with the ball? We don't never do that.
I wouldn't say never. Like McCluskey won. Like McCluskey was really good in Chicago at winning the gain line, and that's why he's been picked. Like Farrell is picking guys who are top of the ground. Like part of this, I think, is that the fact that it is early season and there's still, like, it does take a while to get collision ready, and you can do all the training you want until you get into a test match. I think it's going to take a little while. But also we're looking at selections, and I know Josh van der Fleer is carrying an injury at the moment, but I think you can read into the lines the fact that he didn't make the 23 for all 3 tests, that Andy Farrell's maybe losing a bit of faith in Josh, who was one of the punchiest carriers in the game at the top of his game. And Farrell has gone, okay, well, he's got a bit of a hamstring, but I think the selection was coming. Can I get 3? Well, Baird is a brilliant carrier, but he's also a brilliant line-out forward, and he gives you that hybrid lock. They're missing Joe McCarthy, who gives a huge punch in the carry. And their second row, while they're brilliant at what they do, they're not big carriers in the way that Joe McCarthy is. So they're compensating a little bit for the loss of Joe McCarthy.
Yeah.
He's gone for Paddy McCarthy, who is very, very raw, but is an incredibly powerful carrier. And like from when he was under 20s to now, he wins collisions. He's energetic. Clarkson on the bench, energetic, high work rate player, but also bangs in the carry. Dan Sheehan was missing last week. He bangs in the carry. Like they're looking, it's a very simplistic way of putting it, but you want people who bang. But also I think they need to go direct sometimes when they're almost, I think, have got a bit snobby about going direct. I remember they played Argentina last year, and Argentina were struggling really badly, and it wasn't a great game. And at one stage, they just went for a lot of round the corner carries off the base, and they won every collision, and suddenly they were in the game. And no team should be above doing that. You always should have that in your locker. South Africa last week, 14 men. Right, we're going to go Old Testament. We may be able to play Tony Brown rugby, but we can still go to the corner and ground and pound when we need to. And Ireland, I think, have gone away from that old school ability. It should be there because the players are well able to do it, but they're trying to play their patterns. And if the patterns aren't working, find another way. You got to find another way to win. And this selection to me is one that's like, okay, the players that I've picked are able to win those gain lines and punch on. And if they don't, it looks like he's reached a point where he's got, well, we need to find different players. And even the bench, Prendergast and Timoney, 2 players who both were looked kind of on top of their game last week. He hasn't picked the second row. Ian Henderson was poor in Chicago. He's paid the price. I think we're seeing a bit more ruthlessness and a little less loyalty in selection as well. And it all comes down to that punch, because we can see like the whole team's energy looks off, and we're seeing them as a kind of a fading team. And that's why there's
no punch.
No.
Yeah, I think tied into Rudd's point there as well is like you can actually take pressure off the line out by winning ball at the front and going to that straight into the seam, really tight carry, maybe back to the short side. And those kind of tighter patterns, but you're getting multiple players into the game. Everyone's keeping the gain line. Knowing which rucks you're hitting is far easier. And then as you do a few of those, you grow yourself into the game and you've kind of earned the right to get to the middle of the field or earned the right to get to width. We haven't quite done that.
Well, connected with that, I suppose, say against Japan, for instance, 19 handling errors, 15 turnovers. Again, these are not new things. Like the New Zealand game last year, there were 21 handling errors. It has become sort of customary with this team to just see handling errors across the games, which was very not part of the picture for the years before that. Why that is interesting, and I'm sure it's very complicated. Does any part of you think that, this is just a theory, I don't even know to what extent I believe it, but it's a working theory. Jack Nienaber came in at Leinster, bulk suppliers to the team. Leinster is it's a backline team. It always has been. That's the DNA. And there was this focus on transforming the defence and making them almost like we're going to be fearsome in defence first. And the players basically acknowledged there'd been a huge focus on that in training and less time spent on the attack. And even when Geordie Barrett joined the team, there was something in his pass that had more fizz. I vividly remember him coming on against Bristol and the speed of pass just went up several notches. And I was thinking, this was the Joe Schmidt best passing team in Europe culture not so long ago. And I just wonder if that sharpness and that crispness and that kind of, because you can only make things, prioritise a certain number of things at once. And it's not like anyone is saying that catching the ball and passing the ball is not important, but if it's not being prioritised, then maybe it does slip. And I just wonder if the Nienaber arrival and the consequences of it have just dulled the skill set a touch, and that's manifesting in the Irish team, given Leinster are bulk suppliers. It sounds really unfair to be like, I blame Jacques Nienaber for all this. It's not that. I understand what he's brought to Leinster, but you can only prioritise so many things. And I don't know. I think these number of handling errors, we are now not a team where, I keep saying we, I don't think that's a good rule in journalism. Ireland are not a team where you have total faith the ball is going to stick, the catch pass is going to be good, the crispness is going to be there. What about that theory?
I would lean into that. There's only so many minutes in a training week, and if your defence coach is taking up more than he was in previous seasons, you're not going to be able to spend as much time in your attack. Does that also tie in with the attacking system that Leinster are playing with? It's really about running at best space. There's not a whole lot of intricacy with it, especially in the forwards game when they're playing off Gibson Park. You've got 3-4 forwards lining up, running at best space. It's not like they're trying to get timing and running intricate lines and you're seeing backs and forwards integrating. I've been disappointed with how Ireland have realigned on phase play when we're getting higher into the phase count, like 5th, 6th, 7th phase, where you've got a group of backs in the wide touchline and then the forwards are then carrying for one or two phases. What's the ability to then realign, whether it's on the blind side or realign on the open side, to then challenge higher on the phase count? I don't think the timing, the cohesion, the lines that are being run, I've seen multiple times players cutting each other off, whether it's a communication thing. And then largely for me, it's actually a handling. Like you go back to the key part of the game in New Zealand where Osborne knocks that one on. There was a similar one where there was some really good handling and then Jacob is through a hole. He knocks it on. The pass is slightly behind him. Jimmy O'Brien comes on. There's a simple 2-on-1 like that. Boys and girls are going through every Sunday at mini rugby, and it's kind of fired at Jacob, and Jacob's not fully expecting it for whatever reason, I don't know, but that's just simply not good enough. What I will say about the Irish attack against Japan, we actually did the hard parts well. And where we were breaking down was in the final stages of the attack, where it should actually be easier because that's when you're really executing 2v3s, 2v1s. But the passes weren't going to hand. There is a wider point I'd say as well. Our speed our lack of speed can affect that. There was 2 occasions, again, it was Jacob. He makes a break out of our 22 on one occasion, makes another break down the left touchline. The offload is too far. The Irish players supporting him should have been closer to him. So can our awareness of a player making a break be better so you make that 2v1 easier? Can they make it easier for themselves? And that largely comes down to the time you're spending on it in training, where you can say to the player, I was a bit behind you there, pull that pass back or make that pass. If you're a fullback and it's a 2v1, come in closer to me. You don't need to make that a 10-metre pass. Make it a 5-metre pass because you just want the ball in your hands. But if I'm in any doubt, I'm going to carry that. They're the little mini conversations that you need time to have. And maybe they haven't been quite getting the time.
Okay, interesting. You're probably sensing, Rory, parallels with 2021 when through 20 and 21 we're being told quite a lot things are going really well in training, and I'm hearing that again a lot. This is really happening in training, and you know, Sexton was talking just last week about, look, the kick chase, we're on top, we're going to get there, it's going to happen, our DNA would suggest that'll be fine. So akin to 21, there's a great promise that this is coming, and because of 21 you sort of are inclined to say okay. But obviously past performance is no guarantee of future performance, etc. But that's kind of the mood at the moment. These next 2 weeks are going to tell us a lot. There is a 2021-esque, guys, wait and you see, when this happens, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I had a chance to, you mentioned getting to talk to the players. I had a one-on-one with Caelan Doris on Tuesday evening. First time I talked to him one-on-one, possibly, I think maybe once before when he was much younger, but it was a rare opportunity to talk about a load of different stuff, but I did ask him about that parallel, and he was there. I think actually he was injured during that 21 season, but he would have been a big part of the squad around that time. And he did say he doesn't think it necessarily will be as much of a light bulb moment as, or flicking the switch into that England game. He thinks it may be a little bit more gradual, but and they are very convincing when they're talking to you about how well they train. He was like, today our training was exceptional today. You want to see the standards we're hitting in training. And we know that there's very good players there. And while there are concerns about the age profile in certain areas, we're starting to see him eke away at kind of bringing in a bit of freshness. There's a freshness about the selection. There's a coaching group that it may be a little bit stale in terms of it's very... Even the new faces they brought in, Goodman comes from Leinster, and Johnny Sexton was the captain a year before he comes in a coach. So there's not as if they've gone and got Tony Brown or Jerry Flannery and like completely new ideas. But staleness is another, you can flip the coin on that and say there's great stability and cohesion and they're building towards the same goal. And Farrell is, one of the best coaches in the world. He has demonstrated that. So you have to have a certain amount of trust that they're going to, that while they have slipped off, and maybe they might not get as good as they were because they don't have Sexton anymore, and neither of the out halves may get to that level, and that may be the big thing that they can't get to. That there will be, after a bit of a bottoming out of this dip, and they will start to climb again.
Yeah,
I think they will. They may not be a top 2 team again. They may be a top 4 team, and it may take a decent draw for them to have a good World Cup. But they don't need to be great now. They need to make their mistakes now. But we want to see progress. And the last 2 weeks have been poor, but they're not sugarcoating that. Yet they are definitely quite confident they're certainly publicly confident they're going to turn it around, even if their displays suggest that confidence is a little bit more brittle than they're letting on.
Yeah. One last one before I get your thoughts on how the game's going to go, or any specifics between Australia and Ireland, is of course the line out. It's so hard to know what's going on or why it's going on. I always remember after like a live show with Gary Breen one day, one evening, sitting down backstage, and you get to chat to these guys, and he'd worked under a lot of coaches, and we went through who was actually a good coach and who was not so good. And often the answers are surprising because you don't know. Some coaches, it's like, no, the players took over there. He was rubbish. The results were good, but it was none then, to him. And then others, there was like, well, I presume he was terrible. And the answer can be, no, he was actually really good. He was just unlucky with injuries. That. So on the outside, the point I'm trying to make is we know nothing. So I don't know if this is on Paul O'Connell. I don't know if this is on the players. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But ultimately, we're judging Paul O'Connell on the results that's happening on the field. So if his system, the system that he's trying to employ, could be the best in the world, but if the players can't execute it, then it's not the right system for this team. The line-out's an interesting one. Like when the ball is thrown in, there's multiple different things that can happen. Like, for example, an overthrow or a mistimed lift. That's down to a system thing. We can control that. Then you go with the ball being thrown in, and it's a competition. They get up and win it. The opponents get up and opposition get up and win it. That's then on the caller, like, because the caller's playing like it's hedging effectively. You're trying to predict where the opposition are going to go up. You're trying to predict where it's going to be free, and then beat them with your speed to get up there. What's happened over the last 2 games is both of those things have gone wrong. We've seen players bumping heads. We've seen overthrows. We've seen the hedging of where the ball's been thrown into the line out. So it's not like there's one specific thing that you can go, that's where we're going wrong. There's multiple things going wrong. And players' heads look like they're clouded with thinking about too much. And that's where, like, you do go back to someone like Peter Mahoney, who was able to just go, right, I'm just going to call this on myself. Speed ball, straight up, 2, win it, and we move on. And there's a lot to be said for that. And I think it can also be tied in with less experience at out half. Like, if the out half is demanding that they want the ball at 4 or at 6 because they're trying to run a more intricate back play or launch play, that can put real pressure on the caller. And we're actually not the tallest of teams now. Like, you think back to when we had a really rock solid line out. Paulie was obviously brilliant. Dev Toner had a real height advantage. We don't quite have that anymore. Maybe Baird's going to be that speed guy because he is explosive enough to do it. But look, I'm just confident that they've the right people in there to figure it out. And one good game at the weekend can fill them up with confidence, and quite often it is that. Because when you're second guessing yourself, your hedging can be affected.
So when you say confident, the right people, you're confident because there's a brewing kind of Paul O'Connell talk. You're confident Paul O'Connell is still very much the right person? Yeah,
I think the players have total belief in him. I think they'll also feel the weight as well, and this isn't necessarily a good thing. They'll know that Paulie's under pressure, and they'll be wanting to make this work. But sometimes when you care too much, it can affect you. It can affect your instincts. Sometimes not caring too much can actually really help you. You can be more fluid in your thought process. I think I personally, like, I'm not a line-out expert, far from it, but I've seen enough of them, and I've been in enough meetings and heard what's gone on. And when I'm watching games, I love simplicity. Just speed. And if you need to go to 4, 5, 6-man lineouts and you need to be creative with your inserts, do that. But we need to see a turnaround in it for sure.
What's your read on the O'Connell situation?
Yeah, I think he's dealing with a group of forwards who are being picked for their athleticism and dynamism. In Tyke Burns' case, the breakdown threat, rather than their line-out now. So I think if you were picking the best Irish qualified line-out forward, it'd be between Ross Maloney and Finian Wycherley, but neither of them have the power dynamics and the size to play international rugby, at this level, in the way that Ireland want to play it. And what you want is that Paul O'Connell where he's able to do everything, but he doesn't have himself to pick. And the Irish system hasn't developed an all-round 6'7" powerhouse carrier who can also call lineouts. And Bernard Chapman wrote about it in Sunday Independent about how he thinks Ryan Baird should be the one they pick and just develop all that in him. He's become this defensive lineout leader both at Leinster and Ireland, and he's become really, really destructive on the opposition ball. He's a highly intelligent fella. I think he does have the capacity to lose concentration, and I think some of the misses have been down to him just either not hearing what Ronan Kelleher called or what was called, or just misreading it or going to sleep. And I almost feel with Baird, I wonder if you give him more responsibility or you give him the onus to actually call it, he definitely won't get it wrong if he's called it himself. And he's called for Leinster towards the back end of last season, and he did it really, really well. And he's becoming a bit of a fixture in that number 6 jersey. He switched into second row last week. I think he's becoming a very important player for Ireland, and he needs to cut the mental errors. You could see Kelleher pointing at his head last week in frustration at people switching off.
That's where I think, so I accept why O'Connell's under pressure, but that's at a certain point I'm like, fellas, if Keller's literally saying turn your brains on, what can the coach do?
Absolutely. But ultimately it is his responsibility, and if he continues to, and some of it is
like, be wary of throwing Paul O'Connell overboard here.
I would be, yeah. I'm getting all the messages saying, O'Connell and Goodman out. People saying, why aren't you asking questions of O'Connell? Well, we asked Andy Farrell about it at the weekend, and he defended Paul O'Connell to the hilt. And Andy Farrell's not going to keep someone on board if he doesn't think he's good. O'Connell's his right hand man in many ways. He's also, he's highly influential throughout the setup. It's not just line out. people are looking at Alex Codling in Munster, who has revolutionised the Munster lineout, and that's potentially he could become a part of the Irish setup at some stage. But right now, I think it's not been of the standard you expect.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a bin fire against New Zealand. It was the first game of the season, and they lost their caller after 3 minutes. But it's the concentration ones get me, and also New Zealand read an awful lot of what they were going to do. So maybe they just need, and it's not going to happen mid-window, but they just need to go back and look, maybe analyse themselves as if they're the opposition. They should be doing this anyway, but teams are seeing what they're going to do early. They're reading their cues, and that needs to improve. But there needs to be, the Irish system needs to be in the Leinster Academy, the Munster Academy, the Ulster Academy, finding the next player they can get. Like maybe it's Alan Spicer, the giant lock coming through at Leinster, who's an absolute weapon at maul time. Is he able? Can they get into him now and build him into the line-out caller of the future? Or, you know, he's got all the physical attributes. Can they get that in? But there's no guarantee that these lads are able to do it. They all have their own. It's a hard thing to do, and that's what that's one of the limitations of what they're doing.
Yeah.
But they've got Sheehan back this week, which helps. They've had the same 2 second rows and 6 for the 3 games, so there's continuity and cohesion there. I would expect it to improve, but I would also expect Schmidt, again, being the coach that he is, to have recognised the issues that are there and to try and exploit them, because they have a very good. Nick Frost did a number on the lines. Was it the 3rd test? They have a very good defensive line out, so it will be under huge pressure, and we all know what's coming next week as well.
Yeah. Well, for the love of God, just get the first one right.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing what it's like. It sets a certain set of events in motion. Okay, so the game itself then, Schmidt versus Farrell. So their Irish record, 1 Grand Slam each. Schmidt has 3 Six Nations to Farrell's 2 Six Nations. Now, Joe Schmidt did play 20 games more. So in terms of the best winning percentage, Joe Schmidt or Farrell?
Maybe Farrell, just.
Farrell, yeah. 77% to Joe Schmidt's 71.
It's dipped. It used to be in the 80s.
Yeah. And then just of the rivalry, I know you were saying, Rud, you don't remember many easy games against Australia. Ireland are going for 4 in a row against them. It is just amazing, like the contrasting tales here. Between 1981 and 2010, 81 to 2010, 19 matches, 2 Ireland wins. Whereas you take the past 15 years, 9 matches, 7 Ireland wins. Like, it is, you know, we're sitting here, we're in crisis.
What place is
it's terrible. Like, our line out, it's just awful. So, I mean, things aren't so bad. What do you want to say about what else Australia are going to do then on Saturday? Because they are sort of in free fall. Their last 8 games, they've lost 6. Like, since really they beat the Lions and then beat South Africa, it's sort of just gone off a cliff. The Australian media are talking about fatigue. You know, Joe Schmidt was going to leave after the Lions and now he's staying on. There's kind of a sense it's one tour too many. That's the feeling. And even though I think Schmidt has given 19 debuts and tried to build the depth, there's just not enough depth as well to cover 15 games. That seems to be, the Australian analysis. Looking at their team for Saturday, is this the kick in the tail?
They've picked a team to win this game.
Okay.
Like that's why James O'Connor's coming in. Not necessarily. No, I'm not saying he's not going to make the World Cup, but it's not necessarily with a longer term view.
He's funny. He's 35, obviously. He's been around for 200 years.
Yeah.
He has been in and out and in and out. Like he was doing the punditry for TNT when they lost to Italy.
Yeah, he was brilliant at it as well.
Was he?
Yeah, he was so good. It was great listening.
Did he hammer them?
No.
Get number 10 out. Get number 10
out. But yeah, like they've had, I think this is their 10th halfback combination in this season.
Okay.
Like that is not good for cohesion. I think they've had 4, maybe 5 different fullbacks. Tom Wright's a big loss for him. He's one of their genuine world class players at fullback. Yeah, he's a big loss.
Will Skelton out?
Skelton's a big, like when they don't have that real firepower. We saw that in the first game against the Lions, where the Lions actually could have blown them away that day. Full credit to Australia. They hung in there and they could have and possibly should have won the second test. And then, yeah, look, there's been some great wins along the way. The big point for Australia is they actually need to win for the world rankings. They need to beat us or France to get into the top 6, which is actually really important for how the groups are laid out. So they're going to be all in. But when you're as tired as you are, I'm sure Joe will be creative this week. I don't think he'll have pushed them too hard. maybe not quite a few pints of Guinness, but he has a few creative ways of making training a bit more laid back, and I I think they could put together a far better performance than what they did against Italy, and England played them off the park largely, especially in that second half.
And will they run the ball a lot? Have they embraced the kicking? You know, Joe Schmidt, no better man. What kind of a team are they? I know people would have seen him under the across the lines, obviously, but the kind of 2 or 3 things you suspect he might bring to the party in Dublin specifically.
Yeah, look, they'll definitely look to compete in the air against the Sualihi in particular.
Yeah,
They'll look to get him up on restarts from the halfway, and then they'll push him out to the wing on phase. Jorgensen is a player of real speed. He's dangerous. Is he playing fullback? Yeah, I only scanned their team there, but he's quality. And if you can get him in space, Joe is going to be looking at how this Irish team has played in the last 2 games, and he'll know that they've been a bit disjointed in their attack. He'll also have seen some opportunities to take on the Irish defence. I think we've got caught. We're not quite imposing that rush defence, and when you're doing that, you're not getting high enough to shut off the outside space, and you end up kind of getting high in the middle of the field, and then you're chasing back out to the touchline. If you give Australia those opportunities with the likes of Jorgensen and Suali in the wide channels, they will be far more devastating than Japan were at the weekend. And Japan actually created quite a bit in those wide channels, but they didn't quite finish it. We saw some really loose offloading from them. But they tried to do that against us last year and struggled to get around that Irish defence because they weren't able to earn the physical right up front. But he'll have them fired up to do that. Valentini at 6 is they'll need a big game from him. McWright caused us real trouble last year on the ground. He's a real good poach threat. So yeah, he'll just be looking to pick a few bits and then completely double down on them and get the team believing that this game plan, if you execute it, you can beat this Irish team.
What's your prediction?
Yeah, I would expect an Ireland win. I think it'll be tricky. I think the orange weather warning will have been and gone by the time kickoff comes around. But it's been a difficult week conditions wise. I saw a couple of the Aussies and Fallon and Byrne yesterday enjoying Dublin City around lunchtime, but I say they weren't enjoying it when the rain started. With a monsoon here last night, and it's the end of a long season. They've been on the go and they're like non-stop. The Lions feels like a long time ago. We were talking about them being undercooked then. Well, they're a bit overcooked now.
Yeah, they've just gone off. I mean, the beat South Africa may be kind of still the high of the Lions thing, not being the disaster it had been predicted to be. But they've gone off a cliff really since.
They've lost 2 very key leaders as well in Nick White and James Slipper, their most capped ever international. They retired mid-season, right. So that's a factor in terms of their leadership. They got Carter Gordon back from Rugby League, their 10, who's going to be their 10 for the World Cup, and he looked really. He's carrying a groin. That's why he's not playing this week. He looked top of the ground though last week. He looked like a real running threat. Everything that maybe Ireland lacked with Prendergast, but I thought he looked really slick. They're getting Nwanga Nituwase back from Rugby League as well next year. Daiguno was playing that role this week. I think Joe's seen something in what Japan did, and he's picked a Fijian winger who maybe not be as good under the high ball, but they'll try and get the ball into his hands to make things happen. They'll cause trouble, and if Ireland's line-out plays the way it did against New Zealand, and if Prendergast is tentative, and if they don't punch onto the ball, to predict an Ireland win, we're going to have to see a big improvement. All of the things that, if they play the way they did against Japan in the first half and the way they did in the last 20 against New Zealand, it's not happening. I think this is you have to be much better. But I expect them to be better this week. We're 3 weeks into the window. Last year we didn't get the improvement as it went on, and that's a worry.
Yeah.
But given what they're saying about training, maybe I'm convinced by the fact that I chatted to one on one this week.
He just seems,
interviews on Saturday.
He just seems so strong when I was seeing him.
Big lad. But no, it's like I expect them to be better, because I expect, that's the thing. Yes, we can say that. Oh, look, we complain about these things, but if they don't hold themselves to their high standards, they'll end up like Australia. They have to start playing well again soon, or else they slip into that middle tier, and it's really hard to get back out of it. So they need a performance this week. And if they don't get it this week, then next week's looking very difficult. But even this week, if you lose this week against Australia, you're 1 from 3 going into South Africa. That's looking like a very difficult window, a very damaging window, and that it becomes a very important game when you look at it in that prism.
So in Rory predicting Ireland on the assumption they will get better, in the knowledge that they did not improve through last November.
I'm confident that Ireland will win, and I think we'll see a big improvement. I'd be wary buying into this, oh, we're training really well. And that's also a bit of a red flag as well, because I don't mind hearing coming from camp, oh, Henderson, who wasn't selected, made an absolute mess of the line out this week. Porter, who wasn't selected, was a tyrant at the breakdown, and there was actually a punch up. Or I'm not condoning people punching each other, but you get what I'm saying. Like, is it
training ugly sometimes is good.
Yeah, training ugly, or is the camp too friendly? And you touched on it, Rud, with not necessarily a fresh voice within the coaching ticket. I know Johnny's come in, but that ferocious competitiveness is what's going to drive you on to be successful. Not having this perfect training session where the second team knows what the first team is doing. They'll kind of allow them to do it. They'll replicate the defence. Everyone's patting each other on the back, thinking they're doing great.
Everything flows.
Yeah. That's not international rugby. It's going to be a real challenge. But look, I think you'd be naive to look at Australia and their last two games and think, how are they going to beat Ireland with I know we're not performing at our best, but it's a one-off test match. These things can happen, but I would be confident of an Ireland win, but I don't think it's going to be more than 10 points. It's going to be tight.
Yeah. Okay. South Africa, by the way, against France. Don't have time to get into it, unfortunately. Amazing game. It really did feel like a slightly different sport to what you'd watched in Dublin earlier that afternoon. They are copper fasting their sense as best team in the world, one of the great teams of all time, team to beat for the World Cup. They can mix it any way you want, etc.
Well, like even the innovation, they've picked a team against Italy and they've only got two front rows on their bench. Like Razi's, he's got Marco van Staden is his number 8, but he's also covering he's also covering hooker, which means he can pick 2 second rows, and then he has 2 utility players in Andre Esterhuizen and Quagga Smith. He's absolutely he's 4 steps ahead of everyone else.
You think Razi's just bored and has too much time in his hands?
I like when you see it, you go, wow, what's this about? And then you think about it, and you go, like, that bench covers. There is a risk involved if both hookers get injured, but he's just thinking about things. He's trying things against Italy now that you could see this in a World Cup quarter final or semi final, and no one else is there. And like, I personally would love to see Dan Sheehan playing the back row at some stage for Ireland, and put Kelleher and Sheehan in the same team. And I'd love to see Andy Farrell take a little bit of a leap, maybe not the full leap, because it backfired for Leinster last year with the bringing Porter on after 20 minutes. But he's way ahead of the game, and the power and the self confidence to whip your captain off at half time on his 100th cap. And for him to buy into it.
Yeah, I mean,
he was incredible.
Ronaldo-esque on the bench cheering,
What an event as well.
Oh, well, we were just saying on Monday's show, Stade de France, the best atmosphere in the world. Turns out all you need to do is turn off the lights.
And it shouldn't be, because there's a track going around the pitch. That's the mad thing.
It felt like such an event, though.
It was amazing.
Do you have those two as ahead of New Zealand, England, or is it the South Africa probably ahead, I'm presuming, and France, New Zealand, England very even?
Correct. Exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But South Africa with a bit of
they've
headroom.
They're clear. Like, they've added this running game that, like, they won the World Cup with the power game, their scrum, their maul. Kicking game was exceptional. Excellent goal kicker. Since Tony Brown has come in, they've added this running game where when they win breaking ball, their ability to get realigned, and then Sasha Feinberg and Ghana Zulu he's just magic to watch. I'm actually doing a piece on him next week, going to cover some of the highlights from the URC on him. And I've had good fun going through those few games. He's just got he's got the all-court game, whether it's his passing short or long, very, very kicking game, his acceleration, top-end speed, agility. And that has added a real layer to the South African attack.
We will get stuck into them next week.
I'm not convinced Ireland have fallen out of that bracket just yet either. They're falling, but I don't see them as below England just yet. And I still think they're a little bit below France. I still think they could take New Zealand when they're playing well.
Okay.
So
we're in the chasing pack. I'd agree with that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So hang on. South Africa?
South Africa number 1.
France.
And then I'd expect France to respond. Who are France playing this week?
Fiji.
That would be actually a challenge. Fiji are good, but I'd expect France to really turn it on next week against Australia.
Okay.
I would still have them number 2. Like, we've got to reference the Six Nations game last year where they put a number on us.
And Ireland and New Zealand neck and neck.
Ireland, New Zealand, England.
Yeah.
You have England alongside Ireland, New
third.
Zealand.
Yeah.
And you have Ireland just ahead of
England are trending upwards. Ireland at the moment they're trending downwards. But I think if Ireland just level off and start coming back up, I'm still not convinced England are going to get there.
I think England beat New Zealand this week. I'd be confident of that. Yeah, I really like what England are doing at the moment, and I think early New Zealand can be challenged, and that's where I think the winning and losing of that game is going to be.
Okay. It is tough being New Zealand, isn't it? Like Scotland, it's their biggest game, and and then Chicago was big, and now it's like,
Scotland.
That was unbelievable. And
How much longer do we have?
And now our off week is like Twickenham. You know what I mean? It is relentless when you're
Grand Slam tour.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Scotland back up that good performance against Argentina. Argentina are a good side. They played really well against Wales. I think Argentina will beat Scotland.
Of course they will.
Well, we love giving Scotland a bit of a shoeing. Until they beat us, Ireland, New Zealand or South Africa, then it's tough.
Yeah, jury's out. It was a great game. It was fun though.
Oh, it was amazing. And they should have done it. It reminded me of 2013 for us.
Yeah.
But maybe next time they get over the line.
Yeah. We got to go. You have a press conference to go to?
I do. Talking to Andy Farrell.
What's the big question you're going to ask Farrell?
I haven't been thinking about the podcast. I haven't got that far. I'll think about that in the car on the way out. I think the ruthlessness, something around the ruthlessness he's shown and not picking Andrew Porter. Like, when has he not picked Andrew Porter for a big game? And
what do you think that's about?
I think it's form.
Oh, it's not just rotation, no?
I think it's form. I think the Lions, he picked Alice Genge ahead of him. I think he's starting to lose that. It was never blind loyalty. It was always based on what players have done. I believe Kelleher was very close to being left out. Casey was very close to being left out this week. This was a week where training was ultra competitive and all bets are off. And some of the bench selections, Paddy McCarthy starting, is a sign that he's starting to lose patience with the standards he's seeing. And it's a rocket for someone like Andrew Porter not to be starting a home game against Australia.
Okay.
And I think I'll be interested to see how he frames it, because sometimes he'll go on over, like he'll step away from it now. He put the heat on last week. So yeah, I'll have a bit more of a think in the car, but there's a few different strands to pull today. And he probably won't answer any of the questions anyway.
I know.
From experience.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Ian Madigan, pleasure.
Thanks a million, Joe.
All right, everyone. Thanks very much.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.